Think of President Xi, central casting, brilliant guy. You know, when I say he's brilliant, everyone says, oh, that's terrible. We call him. Well, he runs 1.4 billion people with an iron fist. Smart, brilliant, everything perfect. There's nobody in Hollywood like this guy.
Elon Musk is sitting on the floor. There's the children around. He is prepared to give this PowerPoint presentation to Elon Musk that goes into great detail about the players in Venezuela, in America, how the systems work, how the software runs, how they've done this, how it was developed by Hugo Chavez at the behest of Hugo Chavez, how it was successful in the 2004 referendum in Venezuela. They plan to take this global, which they did. Elon Musk didn't want any of that. He says he doesn't have time for PowerPoint presentations. He asked for the data. So the man gives Elon Musk a USB key. He inserts it, implements the data, injects the data into an artificial intelligence platform, which presents Elon with essentially what we call a one-pager, right? A short summary breakdown of everything that was in that PowerPoint presentation. Elon looks at it very quickly. He gets on the phone and he says, we have a problem. It's true.
And good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ann Vandersteel. You know, for years, we Americans have been told that questioning election integrity is either essential to protecting our republic or dangerous to our democracy. Somewhere between those competing narratives lies the truth, the absolute truth. And that's exactly what we're going to get to today. Over the past several days, DNI Bill Pulte has released intelligence documents discussing Chinese influence operations, internal FBI communications related to election intelligence, and assessments outlining vulnerabilities within America's election infrastructure. The timing raises an obvious question. Why now? Are these documents part of a real, genuine effort to increase transparency, or are we seeing only part of a much larger intelligence picture? The documents acknowledge China's intent to exploit America's political divisions, social media platforms, and the information ecosystem. They also reveal internal communications regarding election intelligence and discuss vulnerabilities within election infrastructure while stopping short of concluding that election outcomes were altered. But there is also another chapter of the story that has received remarkably little public attention. Following the 2020 election, investigators connected to Sidney Powell, Mike Lindell, General Flynn, and others traveled to Serbia to evaluate allegations made by former Serbian parliamentarian Sergej Nogo. Nogo claimed to possess firsthand information regarding intelligence operations, foreign influence, and election-related software development. And according to his written statement, he submitted an affidavit to Sidney Powell's team, participated in video conferences with members of that team, and sought legal protections before identifying additional names and classified information. Those allegations remained controversial, and many of the questions surrounding them have never been publicly resolved. So we're not going to speculate today. We're going to take a look. We're going to examine what's been documented, what's been alleged, and what questions still deserve answers. Joining me today is someone who has covered election integrity from the very beginning. Emerald Robinson has spent years investigating intelligence agencies, election systems, and government accountability. Today, we're going to take a look at what these newly released intelligence documents actually tell us, whether they answer more questions than they raise, and perhaps the most important question facing every American: can we still trust the electoral process enough to vote our way out of challenges facing this constitutional republic? Joining me today is Emerald Robinson. Many of you know Emerald from her years at the White House correspondent, as a White House correspondent, excuse me, for Newsmax. And today she's one of the leading investigative journalists at Lindell TV, has a smoking, screaming X account. Sizzle, don't touch it because it is hot. But she's still covering election integrity, beating the drum on that, as well as the intelligence operations and government accountability. Emerald, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Steel News. And as always, you're just a rock star out there. And I really appreciate the work you do because you beat the drum every day. And I feel like I'm lazy because I kind of laid the baton down, but don't have to worry because you got it.
You know what, Ann? I totally get it. There are days that I get really, really tired. But you know what? I don't feel like God has called me to stop just yet. But yeah, I appreciate that introduction. That's very kind of you, Ann. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. So let's start with the latest because you and I had a great call the other day and we talked about a lot. Couldn't possibly get into all of it, but I think elections are really so central to just the sovereignty of our country, and we don't have control of them. Acting DNI Pulte did put some posts up where he's talking about what he believes in terms of the intelligence community he's ready to release. And you've had an opportunity, I would imagine, to look at some of these documents posted by Pulte. So what's your first reaction to what he posted today?
Well, these are the documents that have already been declassified, and we've been combing through that were available on whitehouse.gov/election-integrity. So if people want to go there and look, and so my takeaway, I've been looking at these. This is nothing new, right? This is nothing really that we didn't know. This is the most benign and safest disclosures they could have possibly done. The focus was largely on China. And yes, China has a major part to play in this. It is undeniable. And we knew, and these documents further confirm, that China had a preference for Joe Biden, right? They sought to discredit President Trump and, as far as narrative sowing and did engage in trying to interfere in the election. But again, these documents are pretty benign based on the underlying intelligence that I know is there. Right. And I've spoken to many intelligence professionals. We know that Sheriff Darleaf out of Michigan, if you want an authoritative voice, Berry County, Michigan, has released a lot of information and documents that is the evidence behind some of this intelligence. And so this is saying they've done it without really giving the American people the full picture. And that allows then, Ann, as you and I both know very well, it allows the corporate media and then those who don't want to touch our elections, for whatever reason, they're happy for our rigged election system.
Right.
To sow the narrative, well, this is a nothing burger. They didn't conclude that votes were actually flipped. They didn't find that Venezuela definitively interfered in their election. And in fact, the CIA memo suggests that they're not sure they didn't think they had the capability. That I would say, where is the underlying intelligence? And I know that the underlying intelligence that is there, because I've talked to many whistleblowers in the intelligence community who worked on this, is very damning toward Smartmatic and Venezuela. And then we're relying on a summary, right? What they gave us was a summary from intelligence professionals who were there when it was being covered up in 2020, as it was being collected, and while the deal was being done. Those people have not been out on their assessment. This is the FBI and the CIA, again, basically investigating themselves.
Right.
It's allowing for people to dismiss the information or say, well, that's not really how it was. And the CIA that was involved in this, right? We know that there are compromised intelligence assets because Hugo Carvajal, who worked as a high-level Venezuelan official and is now in our custody, provided a list of names of people who have been compromised by Venezuela, China, Iran, Cuba, and who have been working against American interests. And we know that, look, the CIA has put Smartmatic voting machines via USAID money. We found that out at the start of the Trump administration, right? They used USAID money to put Smartmatic in Bulgaria, in the Philippines. There's now a federal case about bribery that Smartmatic executives engaged in the Philippines. And we know they've alluded to in the filings that it's not just about bribery, right? It's about more. They know the parts of the machines are made in China. That's noted in the federal filings. So this is the intelligence community, I feel like, once again, trying to cover for itself. Now, if the Trump administration wants
So is this another intelligence operation designed to shape public opinion? Is that the summary here that we're getting?
I feel that way, unless they release more, and that I know that they have, then yeah, it is. And it looks to me like they want to keep the machines, right?
Right.
It
definitely looks like that, because we're not seeing any national security emergency declared on one of our national security infrastructure, as CISA defined it, right, years ago, that this falls under that, and DHS defined it as well. So we don't have any assurances that these machines are actually secure at all. Nothing. Has anything changed? Am I missing something?
No, and they're talking about a patch. Here's what is going on behind the scenes. There are conversations, so people involved, I'll leave it at that, in the declassification are going around to reporters and interested parties and saying, look, we got a ton more information. It validates everything you said. We're going to release it. You're going to be really happy with these releases. But that hasn't happened yet. It reminds me of the first Trump term, when we were constantly being told indictments are coming, right? When we were told that, just don't worry, things are going to happen, it's all going to be okay. And until we actually see this information released, everything is still in place. So we're being told that these more declassifications are going to happen, and that they're very damning specifically for the voting machines. But at the same time, we're being told that they can't get rid of the voting machines ahead of the 2026 elections, which could be the most pivotal midterms in our history. And instead, they're pushing the idea of a patch.
Right.
Now, I had heard before that a patch doesn't work. Remember, they were talking about patching the machines in Georgia for a couple years now. That's something that, had been brought up as a fix to the Dominion machines in Georgia. And professionals back then, IT professionals and voting machine professionals, said, look, a patch won't do anything. In fact, if you look at Tina Peters' situation and the trusted build, and the fact that it wiped all the information, though they're supposed to hold that information for 22 months, that really just covered up whatever had happened forensically with the machines. And they say, so with a patch, you're basically getting the same thing. Right. But again, I just went back. I'd heard this before when we discussed patches, when the idea of a patch was being put out in the media after the president's Thursday night address from the White House on election security. I said, okay, they're saying a patch. Will it work? Every person independent of each other that I know, some of them because they go out publicly, some of them don't go out publicly and talk. They literally just work on this behind the scenes and, provide expert analysis and testimony when necessary. Said, no, that's a joke. They know that's a joke. They've been advised that a patch won't work. So if you're saying that, then you kind of know that it's not going to work. So I don't see anything changing before 2026. And here's the problem they're in. If they're not going to change the machines before 2026 or just get rid of them, if you release this information, and I do know that people who worked in the DIG, the Directors Initiative Group, I think is what it was called, right? The DIG, at the ODNI, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who are pushing for full disclosure, just put it all out there. Let the American people see what we see. And I've been briefed on some of the intelligence. I mean, it is very damning on our whole system. The machines, the mail-in ballots, the voter rolls. They are talking about the voter rolls because that's kind of one of the more safer aspects of this to talk about as well. Everybody says you shouldn't have dead people on voter rolls, right? You should not have China in your voter roll. That's easy. That's 1% of this, though, right? It is a basis for it, but it's 1%. But this information and intelligence is so bad that they told people working at the DIG, look, it'll crush public trust in our elections processes. It'll be essentially a constitutional crisis. To which I say, we're already
there. In fact, this particular person on YouTube says, please answer my question why there have been no charges of fraud for 2020. Does not plainly refute your beliefs, especially when Trump has been in office for 600 days. And this gentleman or person, whoever it is, said that, where was it? Seems where was it? And if there was widespread corruption and hacking in 2020, why hasn't Trump charged a single person with fraud pertaining to 2020? I think those are valid questions.
Those are questions I ask every single day.
Okay.
I ask the Department of Justice. I ask people at the White House, and what I am told is that President Trump does want charges, but it's not filtering down. And I can say I saw that happen a lot. Remember Trump 45? Trump would think that something was going to happen, and he would tell them. And a former body man of his, so like a staff secretary, we call him body men, told me that often, even when they would present an executive order to him that he thought was in the works, it would be ripped out. So I do believe that Trump is pushing for accountability, and he got very upset when Tulsi Gabbard came to him with an incomplete report on the 2020 conspiracy, and he said, "Well, why was this left out?
Right.
Why didn't you include this and this and this?"
So, Emerald, but where does the buck stop?
White House,
Where does the buck stop?
The Chief of Staff's office had told her not to include that information.
Okay. So shouldn't the Chief of Staff be reprimanded for that? I mean, shouldn't the president be talking to Chief of Staff saying, why did you tell them not to include that information? I mean, this is what I'm just like trying to wrap my head around here, because
I was told it wasn't specifically Susie, but it was in her office. So, but he should have, I don't know if Trump knows that Tulsi was told. I don't know if Tulsi told that. I was told by one of Tulsi's aides the story, because obviously that was very upsetting, because I've been told for 2 weeks, Tulsi's got this report, she's going to go into the president, and that's it. And then again, it was very anticlimactic. And then Trump got very upset in that particular meeting, and, used expletives. And then we never got that report.
Right.
So, I think he thinks that these people are going to do something, and then they don't. And he'll even ask, well, when is this going to happen? Why isn't this happening? But he needs to push harder for the accountability, because he does believe, he knows that there are criminals who got away with a conspiracy and putting, so the Dementia Joe tapes come out from his interview, his ghostwriters interviews, just 2 hours of that. That's supposed to be like 70 hours, I think.
Right.
And you could tell in 2017 that Joe Biden was mentally incapable of holding office, right? So President Trump knows that they installed a vegetable in office and they stole the election from him. And I think he does want accountability, but you just can't get anybody else to do it. But look, our intelligence, even with the purges that Bill Pulte is doing, our intelligence community is still captured. You're asking the folks who have engaged in this conspiracy. Yes, they're the foreign actors, okay?
Yeah.
But it was U.S. intelligence who caught on to this. They allowed this to happen. They put it in other countries. I'm told that via putting these machines and our elections, and putting USAID money into elections, we flipped 72 countries is the number that I was given. This is, by a couple different sources, one being a Venezuelan engineer who was involved in developing Smartmatic, because he helped with this. He was also brought into Cook County, Illinois, during the primaries in which Obama ended up president. So, and here's the thing that the intelligence that was not released either, that they don't even seem to be focusing on. And I keep telling people this. I've been highlighting this on my show, The Absolute Truth. We have Venezuelan nationals who worked for Smartmatic, who were involved in building Smartmatic, and then moved from Smartmatic to Sequoia when Smartmatic was allowed to acquire Sequoia in the United States back in 2006. Then a lot of those same people, we have their names, their LinkedIn is still updated with their past and current employment. These people, Venezuelan nationals who worked for Hugo Chavez and Jorge Rodriguez, were then moved on into American companies like Dominion Voting Systems. Now, I'm trying to see if any of them have now moved on to Liberty Vote, who is now, the name change essentially for Dominion. Their resumes of them working in these companies, whether it was, one is at Hard Energy Civic now. That's another voting machine company you don't hear them mentioned as much. And you're trying to say that Venezuela did not influence our elections, that they were not used by our own intelligence agencies to affect our outcomes and the outcomes of other countries? Give me a break. We still have these people working. There's a Venezuelan national who worked at Smartmatic who's working in one of our government, bureaucratic entities that's supposed to be responsible for helping to test and validate the machines. They've been embedded, and we haven't changed that problem. And so to say, oh, well, we found they haven't flipped any votes, that's just not adequate or accurate.
So let's talk about the FBI, as I like to call them, the FBI, because I've just seen too much.
I'm going to borrow that.
Oh, the FBI. I memed it. I have a great meme. I'll send it to you. But I made it years ago when before you had AI, you had to like make it by hand. Anyhow, the FBI is obviously one of the most, I guess, talked about. I guess the FBI releases is probably one of the most talked about FBI internal communications, and including messages that say, "I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI." How do you interpret hearing somebody say, "I'm basically running a shadow government across the FBI," Emerald?
I would say that's treasonous.
Right? Take a look at what this guy says here. I think this is absolutely unbelievable. I mean, this just came out on somebody else's X account, but I think it was an interesting conversation here.
He confirmed that everyone that was involved in challenging the 2020 election showed up in D.C. on January 6th were all right. He noted that the FBI, DHS, CIA, and other government agencies worked to coup the country. They systematically, overtly, and consistently worked to hide critical intelligence from the president, and that is treason. So this is, again, not just like on a memo. He says, go to our website, whitehouse.gov, and it's on there, this stuff. And he's saying this to the whole nation in an official press conference. He noted the FBI put critical intel and proof of election interference in burn bags to destroy the evidence. He noted that the CIA sat on information confirming the election systems were compromised and overtly hid it. He noted the ongoing cover-up of the criminal conspiracy to overthrow the government is being hidden by NBC and ABC. By notifying the state governments that their election data is compromised, he will force them to take action, or they will be guilty of conducting known fraudulent elections.
So there you have it. I mean, to me, that's amazing. I mean, it's not like you and I are surprised by it, but this is what they're putting out on the whitehouse.gov website. So when they're putting that out, Emerald, where's the accountability coming? I mean, people in the chat are saying they should have arrested somebody. It's really not real. You're FOS. I'm FOS. We're MAGA grifters. Whatever. I've heard worse. But do you see what I'm saying? This is the controversy that's being generated, I think, by our own government at this point.
Well, yeah, of course, people are upset, and they're starting to ask, why? I mean, I ask this, like I said, every day, why is there not accountability? And then I go out there and I say it publicly on X. Where are the arrests? They can talk about all this and create sound bites. That's what the Republicans have always done. But where are the arrests? I think the MAGA grifters are the ones who are out there saying, "Oh, it's all fine. This is under control. You're just being a doomer. You're being a pessimist. I'm not invited to, the parties anymore or anything like that because I'm accused of asking too many questions, like where are the arrests?" Pointing out to people who are not probably, even though they're very popular on Fox News, when they go on as a Trump official, acting in good faith, right? They're not really acting in the interest of the American people, and we're not getting what we were promised. And if we don't get it before November 2026, I mean, we're not going to get it afterwards. I mean,
are we going to get it, you think? And if we don't, what does the election look like? Do we have one?
Okay, so this is really, really, okay. I actually think in a free and fair election, I think that the Republicans handily lose the House and the Senate. I do. I think that public opinion is very low of the administration and Republicans. People are feeling the hurt in their wallets. Affordability, prices are still so high. Food, you can't go out to eat. I mean, I was just talking to somebody the other day, and they told me what they paid for 2 hamburgers and, a couple of drinks for themselves and their family of 4. So we talk about gas prices a lot, but it's beyond that. People the food prices are insane. They can't afford to go out and eat anymore. A lot of people have foregone the family vacation this year, I've noticed, because I mean, if you look at a hotel room, you're rarely getting one for less than $500, a night.
Right.
Family of four mostly can't afford that. So vacations elude the average American family. The dream of buying a home is nearly impossible for young people. So the housing market is probably going to crash next year by all the economists I talked to, like Ed Dowd. It's totally propped up still as we see it. The prices now, we're starting to see homes sit, but with young people can't afford a home. They can't afford the American dream. So there's no reasons why they would vote for Republicans right now. And the real pollsters that I talked to behind the scenes, some of them haven't even released their polls yet, and they're kind of sitting on them right now. Some of them say it is dismal for Republicans. So in a free and fair election, they would lose. But the fact that we haven't gotten rid of the machines, I just don't know what to expect. And when I talk to the Trump administration people, or when I talk to Republicans, they're not worried. They don't see. I know you talk to them. Do you think they seem worried about the midterms?
No.
Should they be very worried about now?
No, they should be petrified right about now. We are, here in Florida, we're busting our butts trying to have a free and fair election in Florida. We don't have election integrity down here. We still have the machines down here. We haven't cleaned the voter rolls down here. We have an influx of illegals down here, and on and on and on. And we have an establishment that is trying to shove an establishment candidate down our throats that nobody wants. The same amount of people who support Byron Donalds, there's an equal amount of people that are undecided. And then you've got a bunch of candidates in the race, in the primary. It's a total you-know-what show, Emerald. And it's, I believe, manufactured. I mean, I believe one of the candidates that had an outcome yesterday in a courtroom was a ridiculous outcome, because you're talking about a subjective interpretation of intent of where somebody wants to domicile, when all their paperwork shows that they were taking homestead exemptions and domiciling in another part of the country, which it just makes you illegitimate to run in Florida. But setting that aside, there's other reasons why, our elections are screwed up down here. It's just a total show. Nobody believes anything. Everybody's now attacking everybody. And instead of trying to solve the problem, we're expecting the government to fix it. And I don't know if I think it's fixable at this point. I mean, look at what Trump,
you see a lot of the anger amongst Trump voters, right? And there is a lot of going back.
Justified.
Yeah, justified, because people realize they have not gotten what they were promised. And it's very upsetting. And it's starting to really cause tension amongst the base of Republican voters, because there are those people who are saying, well, I realize I didn't get what I want. And they, or what we voted for, what we were promised. And then everybody has a different finger, they point at who's really responsible for that. And then it's just starting to cause, and look at what's happened with the Maha coalition since they've basically taken, they've totally sidelined Bobby. He's actually just calling people personally now and saying, well, I don't know why you said this about me. Or like Tim Dillon, he did it to Tim Dillon too the other day. Tim Dillon, instead of, just telling his friends behind the scenes, he publicly disclosed exactly what Bobby said to him that he's actually working on. And we're like, well, I was listening to Tim Dillon say this, and I was like, well, yeah, but that's not pulling back the jabs, right? That's not actually, it's food things. Okay, great. But they're kind of inconsequential in the larger scheme, right? If we were living in the normie world that some of these normies say we're living in, sure, that's fine. But we're, like I said, in a constitutional crisis, and it's only going to get worse. And I think after the midterms, if there's not some kind of, miracle and we get accountability before that, we're running out of time. We're not going to get that. You can see kind of a revolt, not like a physical revolt, but you're going to see people even more upset. And I don't know where we go from here. I've been also trying to write about, how we find ourselves here. I'm really diving into a lot of history right now and looking at, who, I think Colonel McGregor said this, and I know he's a friend of yours, said this on my show today. Who's really running America, right?
Yeah.
And it does kind of get back to the bankers, right? That's what he said, international bankers. And when you really look at the history of that, and I think Americans really need educated on history. I think we need book clubs surrounding some of these books that are, out of print and that people don't highlight anymore for people to understand how we got here. Because like you said, we are not in a position with this broken election system that we're going to vote our way out of this. Maybe when we start understanding how we got here, people will start to push back, and we'll look at, what our real rights are via our Constitution. But That's why I laugh when they're so upset, and when people who worked at the dig told me what they said to them about how it will cause people not to have trust in our elections. I'm like, did you not just burst out laughing?
Yeah.
Because the polling from Rasmussen from starting in 2021, and they consistently polled on it, it just got worse and worse and worse as far as how people felt about our elections. And it wasn't just Republicans, it was
That's right.
independents and Democrats as well. Nobody trusts our elections as it is.
You know what's so stupid, Emerald, is that, when you have a country like Argentina, which was a socialist country, vote in a quote libertarian, we'll call maybe a name only, I'm not sure yet, but we'll call it a libertarian candidate in Milei, and they do it in paper and they do it in one day. France does paper ballots in one day. Why can't we? What is so hard with paper ballots and just counting the votes in smaller precincts? I mean, my God, you've got fire departments, police departments, schools all over the place, community centers, on and on. You can have churches, you can have small precincts and hand count these ballots in a single day. And yet we continue to go down this. It's like the definition of insanity, right? And we're all pissed off now.
Well,
So
it's on purpose, and they've
it's on
made
purpose.
the election process so convoluted because not only is it machines, it is mail-in ballots. It is dead voters on the voter rolls. It's all of these things, right?
Yeah.
It's death by 1,000 cuts, and they have to keep it convoluted so that they can keep the still going. And it doesn't just happen in the general elections. Of course, there's been so much focus on the general election since 2020, but I have noticed since I started really, really paying attention in 2020, I mean, I'll be honest, I knew that they were going to do mail-in ballot fraud ahead of 2020, but I didn't know anything about the machines except for what I had read in some Politico and NBC reporting about how upset they were about Dominion voting systems, remember, in 2018 and afterwards, because they felt like Brian Kemp was stealing the elections via these voting machines. And I had read a little bit of that, but I hadn't read much into it. But now that you look at it, you realize this is how I've watched the primaries now and very closely. And I'm convinced they keep the more uniparty, establishment candidates who push the same foreign policy, right? The steady state foreign policy. They're going to keep out your, populist right. And, your even to a degree, I think they keep out some of the socialist left. They've not been as good at that, as they have the real grassroots populist right. But they've done a lot of this in the primaries, and that's why I think you won't hear a lot of Republicans talk about it.
You don't have a lot of people show up.
Yeah.
We have 22 million voters, and 1.3 might show up to vote on August 18th in Florida. So it's like, we can rig that, and then you're stuck with what you get, and then we'll worry about the big rig after.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. And then the whistleblowers that I talked to from Venezuela, when they came into Cook County, Illinois, and started working in the primary that ultimately led to the Obama presidency, they said that, what they really came to do was rig the primary for Obama, and they only had to do it in a few counties and generate some momentum because he was not known. And Hillary Clinton was by far the favorite, but that they had picked that he should be, powers to be, our intel had picked, and the bankers probably had picked that he should be the nominee. And so they came in and rigged a few of the primaries, but then from there, in conjunction with the media hype, they were able to create a real momentum for Obama, who had previously been an unknown and had no chance at all. So it doesn't take, they can rig certain areas. Like you said, you rig the primary and you're in an area where you're going to have that seat stay red, but you get the DC policy no matter who's in place, because you made sure you got that candidate in.
So I want to just shift gears really quickly because this is something that's fascinated me, and it's regarding Serbia. I'm sure you've seen this video.
I have. I'm not as well versed in this as some of the other Serbian aspects, like the emails that have come via defamation, but I am vaguely familiar with it.
Okay, so this is well, I guess when we talk about Serbia, we have to talk about the people that were involved. This is a former Serbian parliamentarian, Sergen Nojo, or Nogo, I'm going to Americanize his name, says that after 2020, he actually reached out to Sidney Powell's legal team. I don't know if you ever talked to Sidney about it or not, but he submitted an affidavit. He did a lot of video calls with people on her team, and he gave evidence relating to Serbia, some intelligence operations, and election software. And according to the people that were involved. Your boss and friend, Mike Lindell, later funded a trip on his plane. That's his plane. So Serbian investigators could meet with Nojo and evaluate the information firsthand. Were you aware that Mike financed that trip?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. Did you ever, so have you ever discussed any aspects of this with him?
No.
Okay. There was a lady, and we'll just call her R. Her name, I think, is out there, but I don't want to further dox the woman because she was not happy. But she traveled on that plane, and you can see her on the left to Serbia, and she met with Serdan, and she spoke with a bunch of folks identified to her as Dominion software programmers. And she has publicly said she believed that the information they gave her warranted an additional investigation. Were you aware of that effort?
Yeah, I've talked to the lady.
Oh, you did. Okay. What are your thoughts based on that information that she presented to you? Or I don't know how deep she went, but do you think it's credible, first of all?
Well, I think that I mean, again, I'm not as familiar with this. I have, spoken with her briefly, and I have some of the information. I've seen this on X. I would say that, I mean, if we're talking about Serbian professionals working with the voting machine companies, haven't we seen emails like that have been leaked from the defamation cases?
Right.
By Sheriff Darleaf puts them out regularly that shows that Serbian engineers or IT professionals working at a site in Serbia were connecting with Venezuelans, with Toronto, or with the Dominion people here in the United States. There's lots of emails that show there was a Serbian connection.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, Patrick Byrne talked about a little bit here and there. I mean, folks that you and I have interviewed in the past have gone there. I do know this information was presented to the DOJ. This guy, Sergan, claims he has a lot of recordings. He has names, dates, evidence, all this repository stuff that basically could be obtained if we had some kind of legal process where investigators would actually pursue this. So I guess
doing any of these.
They're not at all. And this has been brought up over and over. This information was recently given to John Solomon. And I don't know if he's going to look into it or not. So I know I've presented information to John Solomon. It didn't go anywhere, but I don't know if this is something that they feel. I mean, I see what John Solomon's presented.
I know that information from the Venezuelans was presented to John Solomon, and he wanted nothing to do with it back in like 2023.
Why? TikTok. Why?
He just didn't want anything to do with it.
See, and that to me is troubling. The first time I met him was 2019. We gave him clear evidence of weapons that were transferred to Benghazi that were used in Benghazi in 2012. They were part of the Fast and Furious stuff investigation I'd worked on for several years. We had, boxes and ridiculous amounts of information. Judicial Watch was engaged. Solomon was engaged. It went nowhere. Couldn't get, I met with, people inside Grassley's office, inside other members of Congress's office. It went nowhere. Gave him everything. And nobody wanted to open up and do anything about anything. So this is just a perpetual,
Well, all I can figure is that it's because our intelligence agencies are involved, right? And they start poking around. And I know for a fact, sometimes when people started poking around, they were told, leave that alone. You don't want to touch this. I know other reporters were given, information, whether it's the Venezuelans. I know, lots of people have come forward like yourself or, this lady, I almost said her name, to different journalists. Lots of information was presented to me after they'd went to a lot of people. And they would just say, oh, I was told. They heard repeatedly, I was told not to touch this. And, we have lots of witnesses across the globe, cooperating witnesses that are willing to work with the government. I've talked to some of them, right? But no one in the U.S. wants to work with them or investigate what they have to say. And they've been offered no whistleblower protections by the government. Even though, and in the case of Hugo Carvajal, who we already had in custody, he was set to go to trial because Gary Burnson came out and did that public, video letter essentially to the president saying, you have this guy in custody. He's a wealth of information. He needs to be debriefed. You should offer him a plea deal. It came down to the 11th hour before his trial because before, if he went to trial and he got convicted, which he was going to get convicted, he had no reason to participate with the U.S. government. So they get him a plea deal. And his attorney said he's never seen a case where the government didn't come to collect. But they did not want to debrief him. And he's sitting up in the Southern District. He's sitting up in New York in a prison cell, ready to give them everything he had, including the names of the Americans who worked against American interests and were bribed.
Right.
And they didn't want to come up and collect. What does that tell you?
It's an intelligence operation that's controlling everything. And so now you've got DNI acting DNI Pulte releasing these quote intelligence documents, which we already, I mean, God, we were talking about this 6 years ago on social media. There's like nothing new here. Solomon is repackaging it and presenting it like it's the golden egg. Again, nothing new here. I'm just glad he's not saying TikTok, because I probably would reach to my TV and
Yes.
yeah, exactly. So these allegations involving Serbia, I think they should get a fresh review. But then I say that and I'm like, why? Is anybody going to do anything? You just gave yet another example. We have someone sitting in custody and he's a bona fide whistleblower and we can't get anything out of it. Hugo Chavez, you would think he would want, an island and a vacation somewhere if he just spilled the beans on everything. And he obviously could. I mean, so let's zoom out at this whole thing. Are we actually witnessing competing factions inside the intelligence community, or are we just simply seeing overdue transparency, or are we just getting a rope-a-dope as usual?
No, there's still, I mean, Tulsi faced so many blocks from trying to release any of this information. Our intelligence community is still captured. So, you got a really small number of people in there who's actually interested in doing this work, and they keep getting blocked at every turn. So Bill Pulte, to his credit, is doing some layoffs and some firings until Jay Clayton is confirmed, and then there will be probably none, right? Let's be honest. I think Clayton even said he has no interest in, to make sure he got confirmed. But what I was told is that the personnel that are being let go are pretty inconsequential. It's not necessarily the bad actors per se with a lot of power who block, the ones like running the shadow government that block the intelligence getting from whether it's Tulsi Gabbard or the president. So I think that's a lot of the roadblocks you run up against. And here's the thing, a lot of them know, I mean, there are people in our intelligence community who know this very well because they probably coordinated with these people. It's asking the CIA to investigate itself, and they're not going to do it. Remember, they have to offshore a lot of what they do. And you see how especially, and I would point people back, I don't know the other thing as well, but I would point to just, again, those emails released by Dar Leaf that show the connection between Serbia and women voting systems. And how it's explained to me is that in those Serbian offices, the servers are Huawei servers. That brings in your China connection. There are emails of a Chinese official talking to a Serbian, talking to a Venezuelan. So it's foreign interference, right? And they're a big part of this. But I believe it's in conjunction with our own intelligence apparatus. So they're not going to investigate. And it's well documented. I mean, be it, what this whistleblower has or this other whistleblower has, or what was found in discovery in this defamation case, it all points to the same kind of conspiracy, right? We know that there's a Serbian element. We know there's a Venezuelan element. We know there's China. In fact, I mean, Secretary Mullen just said the other day publicly that a lot of the parts in the voting machines, which is also stated in the filings in the Southern District of Florida with the Smartmatic bribery case, a lot of the actual hardware is made in China. And we know what they do when they make hardware. They put spyware in it, or they have a back door. It's all problematic. And if that's the case, and if all the voting machines have it, there's your case for decertifying the machines.
And decertifying elections, and until we get and just stopping, or getting a national emergency order to stop the use of machines, period. That's a threat to our national security. I want to post this here. Natalie Winter, someone that I've seen you repost before. She just posted today, leaked documents, mainstream journalists taking pay-for-play trips to China. As Xi praised influence group flew 26 elite journalists to China, then privately celebrated changing how they viewed and covered Beijing. I'm naming names. She goes through and she has quite a list here. Are you surprised by this?
No, I thought we already knew that. Going back to the first Trump administration, remember? They did put a major focus on that. And then we found out, I mean, it was kind of overt back then because you had China Daily and the Washington Post, right? I'm not surprised by this. And it's not just China doing this. It's also, Qatar, Israel.
Right.
And it does color their no.
Are you surprised by this post right here by Diana Penchenko, who paid Laura Loomer, Ukrainian oligarch Akhmatov? Did you see this that came out today?
I saw that one today as I was getting ready to go on my show. I'm not surprised by that.
What are your thoughts? Do you think she is being paid by these people?
I think she's saying a very different thing than what she said before. And
is her trip to Ukraine part of it? Is her trip and mea culpa to Zelensky a part of it?
I have not looked at this in depth, but I do find it very odd that she's changing how she feels about Zelensky, whom she was very critical of. And look, he's not a good guy. I would hope that she.
That's where our USAID money was going. That's where our USAID money was going in large part, right?
This is so much more. And look at the oligarchs and how they further enrich themselves. And I mean, Zelensky is just an actor. He's just a joke. But what disturbs me the most about this is that if this is being paid for on the right, to change public opinion on Zelensky of a group of people who had been strongly opposed to him. And remember, President Trump was very strongly opposed to him.
Right.
In the election. It worries me that our policy is changing. And that we're going to get more deeply embedded than we are. Look, we know we're in this proxy war. We're already in this war in Ukraine.
That's right.
It worries me that it is going to get even worse.
I think so.
I am very worried that we're going to have a merging of the conflicts, right? Because you had Ukraine hitting a vessel in the Caspian Sea. So now they're no longer isolated conflicts. No. And you're bringing in what you see in, the Houthis closing the Bab el-Mandeb. I mean, this is spreading. We're literally potentially going into World War III. And remember, it was the Trump base who wanted no new conflicts.
I know. And it's the diehard grifters that are cheering on for the conflict. It's the diehard MAGA grifters that are cheering on for the conflict.
And then we're now being told this is America first.
No, it's not.
When it was completely the opposite. And we know they do pay campaigns. A former colleague of mine at One America, she went into the security apparatus, decided that wasn't for her, came out, became a contractor for different things. And she was approached about writing essentially propaganda for the White House. And she documented that in detail. I don't think they'll ever reach out to get her again to try to contract her for anything, because she kind of burned the house down and just revealed everything that they reached out and the reports they sent and who it was and the papers and the the middleman they were using. This is what we used to be so upset about the left doing, right? How they coordinated this propaganda and to sway public opinion for something that was not in America's interest. And so I think that's been one of the most disappointing parts of this term for me, is seeing some of people I've respected get sucked into it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that 100%.
I don't think you had to. I know it is tough in the independent game. You and I both know that.
Yep.
But you don't have to do that.
You don't have to sell out. So I guess in trying to, this is a lot of like, oh, sorry, we're being doomers again. Sorry, Emerald. Sorry to drag you down the rabbit hole. I'm just a realist. If people call that doom scrolling, it is what it is. I mean, it's like, I'm not going to sit here and, as they say, you could piss on my back and tell me it's rain. No. My eyes don't deceive me. And to be honest, when people give me this whole garbage, the white hats are in control. All the stuff's happening behind the scenes. You know what? No. That's not a constitutional republic. That is not how a government is supposed to be run. It's supposed to be transparent, of, by, for the people. And when we're being told to sit down, eat popcorn, and shut up and let the man cook, I'm just like, screw you. Who the hell are you? And how much more money do you get from that for sale in Israel?
That's what they told us in the first Trump term.
Right.
And that's how Bill Barr got to operate through and play out the end of the first Trump term with no accountability, because he had people out there. I wish somebody would pay me to spread propaganda. You might get your way. There are way more dollars out there than you know, and way more people getting paid than you even know. So
exactly.
Expert, you might get your wish. Actually, you know what? It's so funny. This just made me think of, I was told, so what, this guy I knew who was an operative and like social media and memes and all that, he's not anymore. But that
Right.
is what he was doing. He built one of the bigger firms on the right doing this. And I was calling him because I was checking into some. It wasn't the latest one you mentioned, but I was checking into some of this other pay for play that I was noticing happening. So I call
Right.
him up and I'm like, "Are you guys paying for this?" And he's like, he says, "I left that. I got tired of that. I'm not even doing that anymore." And so he and I got to talking, and he said, "You're on like a blacklist not to be paid because they
Right.
know if they reach out to you, you're going to
Right.
say no."
That's
And then
right.
you're going to tell everybody that we reached out to you to try
Right.
to pay you and what for. So anyway,
That's so funny. I'm still waiting for Zelensky to call me. I don't understand why he's not calling. Putin hasn't called. Xi hasn't called. Nobody from Venezuela's called.
and I
Actually,
feel like
nobody's
it's kind of
calling.
on the cheap though, because I found out some of my friends had gotten paid back. This was during the Biden years, gotten paid to push, McCarthy for speaker to keep him to
Right.
vote against the recall effort. And there was some people I was really surprised, and they don't even get original with it. Like they literally just take and copy and paste. Basically, they might change 2 words, I guess, what is
Yeah.
suggested to them. And when I found out how much it was $1,400 a tweet. But they
Wow.
burned their integrity
They
because some of these
did.
people I didn't actually think would do that. I really honestly didn't. And it was for $1,400 and for McCarthy. And I thought, gosh, if you were going to sell out, I would have thought you should have had a bigger price tag.
Yeah, no kidding. Unbelievable. 14. Well, that just goes to show there's no money in this. There just isn't any money in this.
I mean, I think the money being doled out by Brad Parscale was
Parscale.
higher per tweet.
Well, I put a post up today. I know somebody I worked with years ago didn't have a pot to piss in, was always scrounging for money, lived rental house, always crying, poor mouth. Next thing I know, he's moved literally 20 minutes down the street, almost on the ocean, on the intercoastal, in a $1.5 million house, and is running around with Don Jr. I'm like, huh? I'm like, oh, Clock Tower X, Brad Parscale, you're on the payroll. I got it. So you're full of crap, basically. All your ranting and raving podcasting is just a bunch of garbage that we're supposed to just be entertained by. Okay. Welcome to America.
I know it's been very surprising. I think some people thought too, well, we won this election cycle, so we're good, right?
Right.
And then they thought, well, it's about time because it is hard. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's not easy out here, when in the independent world. So they say, okay, well, you know what, we won, we're good, and I'm on the right side of things because I'm pro-Trump, right?
Right.
And they're like, at the end of the day, I'm doing the right thing because it's pro-Trump, but they don't now differentiate where the America First platform was to where we've drifted now.
Correct.
And what you're being asked to support. So,
yeah.
So
if Americans are no longer able to trust elections, I guess if we can't vote our way out of the challenges facing our country, what's the one piece of hope you can give Americans?
God, I mean, what else? It would just, I mean, I'm a Christian, so I ultimately, and that's why, like you, I don't feel like I'm a pessimist.
Right.
Is that I'm a realist and I want to know what I'm dealing with and how to adequately prepare or respond or pray. Okay. I have to face the situation, so I know how to pray and then prepare. So I don't feel defeated by the situation. Well, maybe that's not true. Some days I do, and some days I get really stressed and I get really mad and I try to let that go. I've done better about that since I did take a break and go to Italy. I've been a little bit better about not getting as mad and letting it weigh on me because I do ultimately have to know that God is in control. So I have strong faith.
That's right.
But how do we get out of it? I mean, that's probably the question I ask every person that I feel is authoritative or truly.
Well, how would you advise? Trump? How would you advise Trump then? I mean, if you had his ear, if you were, Susie Wiles or Laura Loomer, or whomever he listens to on a regular basis, what would you tell him?
Well, I get rid of the machines today. I think you can do a national emergency and delay the elections, right, till you have the infrastructure in place to do paper ballots. I would immediately start locking up the bad actors who perpetuated this, especially the Americans who were bought off. Yeah. And I would lean on Todd Blanche every single day. I think you can find a way to prosecute them like they have some of them in the Southern District of Florida, prosecute them outside of the District of Columbia. I understand what the court system is like there, but also they do what we don't do. They understand that the process is the punishment, and they, at least they lean on people that way. We don't do that. So I would push him to, like I said, lean on the Department of Justice every day until you got prosecutions, start arresting people, wrap them up, and then immediately address the elections immediately. And I would say release all the intelligence.
Yeah, I agree.
You got to trust the American people because they already know it's not right.
Yeah.
This is not a big shock to them.
No.
On the right and the left. And you just pull off the Band-Aid, you pull it fast and hard, and then you begin to heal.
That's right. I think that's sound advice. I think it's totally sound advice. Taco Sniffer Expert says, do everything by force, cover our government with military and patriots, take back our country immediately, like we're at war, let's go, or I'm tired of talking about it. Well,
me too.
Yeah, we're tired of talking about it. And hey, Jem, he says we need a rest. I don't know. I'm so sick of saying we need a rest because it just never happens. It never happens.
And they laugh. Here's the thing, y'all. Like we say we need a rest, and they'll even they'll go out there and do their sound bites on TV, but then they laugh behind the scenes like it's crazy to say they're going to arrest people. They don't take it seriously. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Jeffrey, thank you for being here. Good guy. Always in the feed. Good guy. Emerald, I really appreciate you. I know this is, first of all, hats off to you for slugging it out every single day. As I got ready for this show, I said, oh my God, I don't know how she still does it every day. It's so hard because there's not a solution that we know what the solution needs to be, but it never seems to get to a solution. We just keep throwing more gaslighting fires on everybody. We're this close. We've given so much good intel. We have her dumping everything. But it's like, okay, great. We see it. So now the only chance we have left is we can't go to the ballot box because we know it's rigged. People are going to reach for the ammo box next because they're pissed.
Look, people at some point are going to get fed up.
Yeah.
And you cannot want that, but at some point, and I think Europe's closer to there than we are, right? That
Absolutely.
They don't have the 2A. That's what they lack. And that's why they're further along. Did you say it was Jeffrey mentioned 2A? So that's why they're a little bit further along, but you're starting to see the Irish fight back a little bit against what the globalists are doing to them with the Muslim invasion and taking away their rights. And I won't lie, I hear a lot of people in my circles, because we get together and, we think at least on a local level, like, what can we do? And I think you have more people, well, I don't know about across the globe, or across the country, but, in my community, we do get together and we talk and we debate and we talk about history, and at points, that countries found themselves where they were falling and tyranny prevailed, what happened in history. And I keep hearing scholars bring up Franco, and I hear Franco thrown around a lot these days behind the scenes.
Oh my God. There you go.
Really, really important, intelligent people. So
yeah, there you go. I'm just waiting for, I'm waiting for the other. Yeah. Everybody's a little bit Irish. I have a little bit in me just from my mother's side of the family. That was the side that fought in the Revolutionary War, by the way. My great grandfather. So
I'm the Scotch Irish Highlanders that ended up in the Appalachian Mountains and are still hiding from the British.
You may be hiding from them again.
Not the British now, right?
No, it's not the British now. Well, it could be. Who knows? Emerald, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Thank you for the hard work you're doing. I'm glad you got some time off. You deserved it. And I hope John Solomon comes up with something solid. I mean, maybe he should contact you for the intelligence, because it seems to be that citizen journalists are a little bit ahead.
And he said he wanted to talk to him, but every time I got near him, he felt it. So I don't know.
I don't know. I guess we'll have to see. Maybe he's got a big surprise and he wants to impress you.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. I will applaud him and praise him if he does. I will give credit where credit is due.
I agree. Mr. Wonderful the Cat is right. He says, I recommend everybody write to Trump, demand accountability, focus on making America better, and stop these foreign involvements. If you do not speak up, how do you expect some change? He's right. We have to keep using our voice. Absolutely.
I do. You know what? I liked when he was on Twitter more in the first term, because he did pay a lot of attention to Twitter, and we saw those kind of reactionary responses.
Yeah.
where you could flag something for it. You had this mass, like you're talking about, writing to him. That was great. I thought it was a great way to interact with the president. He really paid attention to it. And he would see this stuff on Twitter, and then he would go in and ask his advisors about it. And then a lot of times you would see a total reverse course on something because the public pressure campaign on social media had worked. He doesn't seem to be on, Twitter as much, and we don't see as much of that reactionary president to the people this time around. And that's one of the aspects of the first Trump administration I really appreciated and liked. And I saw it firsthand because remember, I was on the ground that whole time.
That's right.
And I would see the people and see him respond. And I knew with the conversations that were happening behind the scenes, and he really did respond to what the people were saying.
That's right. And that's the whole design of our government. And that seems to be so lost, so forgotten. But I guess we'll still be out here, Emerald. I don't know if I'll ever go back to a daily the way you do, but who knows?
Don't. Well, I don't know. Maybe you should. We miss you, but
I don't know. I'm kind of enjoying what I'm doing. I can poke a few holes, go after a few things, and I'm going to do that after you leave. I'm going to deal with my Florida stuff here because I know people want to hear a little bit about my response to what happened yesterday with the Fishback trial. And, as a big Renner supporter, the only guy that stands on the 10th Amendment down here and wants to protect Florida from the idiots in DC, the District of Corruption, I'm all in. I think everybody should find a good governor and go all in to get them elected and just immunize yourself from the BS that goes on in the District of Corruption.
I've been following the Florida stuff via you. You've been the best source of information on that. So I appreciate your Florida reporting. And we're always watching Florida because my husband's always trying to move me down there. So I keep a close eye on Florida politics too.
Do, because we end up with David Jolly. I mean, I doubt he'll last more than 4 years. He's a Dem for your guns, and he's all about woke and transgender. I mean, he's not. I don't see how he gets elected. But Byron for 8 years would be about it would be like Gavin Newsom light, and it would just get Gavin Newsom light to start, and it would just become Gavin Newsom heavy. After 8 years, it would be destroyed. It would be destructive.
Got so many skeletons in the closet. You're probably not going to get a lot of transparency. And
correct.
All right. Good to see you, Ann. Thank you so much.
Everyone. You take care, hon. Bye-bye. Great. What an incredible lady. I mean, truly, she is, I respect her. I look up to her. I think she does an amazing job in the work that she does. And it's a grind, what she does every single day, day in and day out. I did it for years at Steel Truth at 9 o'clock at night. It's a grind. And I traveled nonstop. I was traveling 4 and 5 days a week doing a show. It was a lot. Now I'm just very focused on trying to save my state and also what we're doing at American Made Foundation, which means I'm going to bring you up to speed on my comments, my thoughts, I should say, on the judge's decision yesterday to allow James Fishback to proceed in the election based on his opinion as he interpreted the Florida Constitution, saying it comes down to the intent of where James Fishback wanted to domicile. And he based this on the heels of, an apartment that James Fishback bought, signed paperwork that says he was going to be his primary residence, got a homestead exemption for it, which you can only get a homestead exemption if you claim it to be your primary residence, filed his income taxes with his DC apartment as the address, while claiming his business was registered to an address at his grandmother's house that actually at one point no longer lived there. Some other people came in and bought the house and they homesteaded that house. So they were defaulted on their paperwork. They weren't even up to speed there. I mean, there's just so much going on. But I think something that really stands out that I think we should take a closer look at is the fact that, James Fishback at one point was very clear to his supporters about his disposition on voting in DC. So I'm going to let you take a listen to this in James Fishback's own words.
Now let's talk about the voting documents. So you did in fact vote once in your life in Washington, D.C., correct?
That is correct.
So you voted in a state you didn't live in?
I've never voted in any other state other than Florida. I have never voted.
So the voter records are wrong?
Washington, D.C. that has no voter ID, that has absolutely no proof of anything. Yeah, I never voted in Washington, D.C. I don't know why they would say that.
Now let's talk about the voting documents. So you did in fact vote once in your life.
There you go. He says under oath that he did vote in Washington, D.C. in November of 2020. In the Florida Constitution, you have a 7-year residency requirement, meaning you have to be a domiciled resident of Florida for 7 consecutive years before you can run for governor. In 2020, that had been 6 years ago, he voted in DC, but you heard him also tell his supporters previous to being under oath last week or 2 weeks ago that he never voted in Washington, DC, and that they don't require voter ID. So he's basically insinuating that somebody must have voted in his name, right? That's the sort of underlying insinuation there. So this is a guy who will lie to his supporters, but then be forced to tell the truth on the stand because we put the information out. I've been putting it out for months now that he was not eligible per the Florida Constitution, that he had other issues going on in Washington, D.C., making him ineligible. So you have to ask yourself, when a judge is going to rule that way, that's pretty subjective. So that's one. Then you have to look at this piece of evidence right here. Valerie Wirtz says James Fishback reportedly attended a private dinner hosted by a CARE Florida official, Council for American Islamic Relations, a Florida official. DeSantis designated CARE a terrorist organization in Florida. Fishback should have to answer. Did he attend? Who organized it? And was money raised? Voters deserve the truth. I think that's a fair question. This is a post where James Fishback came on my page and denied having any connection to CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. He claimed he's never met with anyone who works for them and has never taken a penny from CARE. The public record showed the exact opposite. Former CARE Florida Executive Director of 10 years, Hassan Shibli, is listed as a donor. An active CARE Florida board director also donated, Mohammed Mubarak. Mustafa Amin, the man who hosted a private dinner for Fishback at his own house and works as a lawyer spokesman for the Islamic Society of Tampa, posted the photos himself. And I'll get to that link in a second. And then, she goes on to say, I showed the receipts once. Now I'm showing them again. Live action, researching, decide for yourself if you feel like James Fishback is being fully truthful. He blocked me on X prior to these videos. So I think all this is, in my opinion, pretty interesting that this is where we are with someone like James Fishback, who is apparently, to me, what I would call someone who's not truthful. I don't want to say the other word, but I would say there's definitely major discrepancies, or is he just flat out a liar? That's for you to decide. But here's Valerie Wirtz's Facebook page, and this is where James Fishback is rebutting that. He says, Kelly, I've never met with anyone who works for CARE, nor ever would, nor would I ever. Foreign money has no place in American politics, and I'm the only candidate who's ever never taken a penny from CARE or AIPAC. And then she goes on to explain the public record, saying the exact opposite. So, again, this is the kind of stuff that I've come to expect from somebody like James Fishback. I find it highly disturbing. It doesn't make me happy to see that. It doesn't make me happy to report on it. But what does make me happy to report is the fact that we have a candidate out there who has the sound experience. He's been a speaker. He's been a public leader. He's been a commander in the Navy for 23 years. He has served in the Florida House since 2015. He has been the Speaker of the House from 2022 to 2024. He's been an attorney, a prosecuting attorney in probably one of the most virulent counties in the state of Florida, down in Broward County. I mean, it's just horrific down there. And he is running for governor, and he's leading in the polls right now, just below Byron Donalds. That's this particular person right here, Paul Renner. And Paul Renner, this is a piece I wrote on X the other day. He surged from 14 to 18.8%. He's solidly in second. But don't take my word for it. Look at the poll that this was based on. This was done by, Political Matrix did this poll, Halifax Productions. Political Matrix, rising, Fishback rises despite balance challenge. Collins is totally collapsed. He's out of the picture. But the big change was right after the Patrick Bet-David podcast debate. This is where we saw Renner really resonate with people, because when you put an adult on the stage with two children that were fighting, namely Fishback and Collins, it becomes very evident. Plus, Fishback's talking points and platform mirror Paul Renner's specifically, but he doesn't have the policies to back it up. And that became very evident in the debate as well. So Fishback went from 2% to 13%. Byron Donalds stayed at 32%. Renner solidly in second at 18.8%. Collins at 2.2%, and 31.6% are undecided. So nearly 1/3 of the Republican primary voters have yet to make a final decision. To me, that is absolutely flabbergasting that we have 1/3 of our community that still says, yeah, we don't really know what we're going to do and who we're going to vote for. So if you're a serious voter right now, you need to do your serious homework, because we have a primary on August 18th. You've got David Jolly on the Democrat side, who's unopposed. He's running as a Democrat. He's a Second Amendment gun-grabbing, trans woke guy that's going to pushes back to DEI wokeism. Then on the right, you've got Byron Donalds, who I did a presentation in Naples a couple of weeks ago. I did a whole slideshow. It's linked on my Rumble account. It's linked on X. But I went through Byron Donalds and showed just what a corrupt criminal he is and what his double dealing is doing, including that of his wife. I went through Collins and sort of his blasé, lackluster approach to everything he's done. I hate to say it, he's a veteran, and we appreciate that. But when it comes to governing, he doesn't have the experience. Renner is the only guy that has experience, and Fishback consistently, should we say, he gets caught saying one thing and then saying another. Maybe he forgets, maybe he's confused, or maybe he's just lying, but something is not right there. And so that needs to be further detailed. And for those that are Fishback this and Fishback that, he comes across more of a social media influencer than a serious candidate. The only candidate I see that's serious, that has the policies and procedures, has a contract with Florida for the first 100 days, is on Paul Renner's website, voterenner.com. So if you're a Floridian and you are looking seriously, who am I going to vote for? Go to every one of these candidates' pages. But then look seriously at what they're doing. Don't worry about how many followers they have. It's not about that, because following people on social media is really because a lot of people just want to be entertained, and they're going to just do whatever the herd does. For the first time in your life, maybe you should step up and start reading this stuff. Because I tell you what, come November, when we have a real midterm election, if we don't have the right person challenging David Jolly, the only person who can legitimately beat David Jolly is Paul Renner, because he has a real plan to put a moratorium on these AI data centers, to eliminate our property tax by increasing the homestead exemption in Florida to $1 million. So if your home is by the tax rolls is $1 million or less, your property taxes are over and done. You're not paying anything, not school, not anything, zero. Goose egg. So this is what I'm talking about. We need to get to that. He's got a plan to cut 30% of the fat out of the state of Florida. He's got a plan to reduce your insurance for your homes by up to 20%. He's got a plan to deal with the illegal immigration here in Florida, a plan to protect our children. He wants to keep Surgeon General Ladapo on as the Surgeon General, the only Surgeon General who's basically said no more vaccine mandates. I mean, everybody in Florida moved here because of the free state of Florida, which Paul Renner architected. So this is where we have to go if we want to save our state. This is where we have to go if we want to be good stewards of our country, of our state, of our town, of our families. We have to take the responsibility. It's up to us. And I know, Emerald and I talked about how you can't really vote our way out of it. I absolutely agree with that. It's going to take more than just voting. We have to do more. And I know we're tired, of reading about all this stuff. But if at the end of the day, if we don't actually actively engage in this problem, in this situation, which we call politics, which we call elections, we only have ourselves to blame at this point. We really, really do. Because the unification I see happening in Washington, D.C. with Israel is very troubling. Bibi's here for Lindsay's funeral today. God rest his soul. I'm sure it's burning somewhere else right now, because I doubt he made it to where I hope the rest of us are going. So I guess that's the end of my rant. I really appreciate you guys spending some time with us. Love all the trolls on X and on, YouTube. You guys never cease to impress me with the fact that show up based on certain topics. And so whenever I talk about elections, that's when you YouTube trolls show up. I think it's awesome. I'm sure you guys are paid to do that. If not, God, I'm glad you like to waste your time, just ragging on somebody. That's about as good as it gets in your life. And I'm sorry for you. You guys have a great afternoon. God bless. And we'll catch you next time.